Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Weyburn City Council at the chamber here, held at Weyburn City Council chambers today, Monday, January 22nd, 2018. In the opening, I'd like to just say that I'd like to thank all the members of emergency services in Weyburn for their work in containing the large fire that happened this past week. As we all know, fires have potential cause serious damage to property and to a city, and pose a great risk not only to the residents but also to the service members who are bravely taking on the challenges that are placed before them. So again, as we start this meeting, I want to thank you for your continued commitment to protecting the city of Weyburn and all of its residents. And I present that from myself and from the council that is sitting here before you today. With that, we'll bring the meeting to order and start at our regular meeting of Weyburn City Council here held at Council Chambers 5 p.m. Monday, January 22nd. The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes of the regular council meeting and strategic planning priorities meeting held January 8th, 2018. Do we have a motion, please?
I'll move that, Your Worship.
Second?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Discussion? Call to question. All in favor? And carried unanimously. Additions to the agenda. Mr. Hardy?
Your Worship, there are no additions to tonight's agenda.
Any council members? And with that, we'll move on to the second one. Hearings and public notices, public hearings and notices. There's nothing on that. I just want to make note that if you notice over here to the right of Mr. Wheeler, we have our Luis Pasqua that is sitting here as the fill-in mayor for the youth. Tonight, Mr. Landon Fields couldn't make it tonight, and she will be representing the youth mayor as we proceed forward. So thank you and welcome to you, and hope you join in the discussion. If we point over to you to ask your opinion, just hit the button to talk and then hit it when you're finished talking. All right?
Understood.
Okay. All right. And you don't even have to lean that forward close to it. Just press the button. All right, great. With that, we now have we are listening to some delegations, and tonight we have from the delegation from 2018 Economic Development Strategic Plan, Twyla Walkden, if you would please come forward and give us your remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Twyla Walkden, and I'm the Executive Director of the Weyburn Regional Economic Development. And usually this time of year, I attend Council in order to give you a brief summary of what we've accomplished in 2017 and let you know that what we're working on in terms of our 2018 mandate. Thanks for allowing me to stand before you here to present some exciting initiatives which we're working on. And those initiatives are really mainly focused on bringing investment and growth to Weyburn and area. So just for some background, for those at home that might not be familiar with the Weyburn Regional Economic Development Agency, we're an agency responsible for providing leadership on the advancement of economic development and tourism in the Weyburn region. We create and implement strategies to build a foundation for sustained prosperity in the Weyburn region. And Weyburn Regional Economic Development is a non-profit corporation registered in the province of Saskatchewan. Our funding is acquired primarily through municipal partnerships, and that's with the City of Weyburn and the Rural Municipality of Weyburn. Weyburn Regional Economic Development has 2 employees, myself and Miriam Egla. Miriam's sitting in the audience today, and she's our contract marketing coordinator. Now, some people might get confused because I stand sometimes before you as a representative of the chamber, and I stand as a representative of Weyburn Regional Economic Development. And I do represent both of those agencies. I am executive director of both. I am contracted through the chamber to perform my executive director roles with economic development. So in terms of 2018, 2018 is going to be a busy and exciting year for our agency and for our community as a whole. My sense is that the economic downturn is behind us, and I feel that we are well poised to resume our position as a strong and resilient community. I've come today to highlight some of the innovative ways in which we plan to attract investment into our community. Economic development is more than attracting shoe stores and additional restaurants to the area. It's growing and strengthening our community really from the inside out. Investors are drawn to our communities which are innovative and forward-thinking. In 2017, we worked to develop a valuable investment guide which demonstrates to potential investors that we're open for business and ready for future investment. This document is ready for release this month and will be a game changer in terms of our ability to attract investment. We've really done all the investors' homework for them. There was some eye-opening data revealed in this study, and I'd like to take the opportunity just to share with you some of that data. Did you know that Weyburn has decreased its median age by 7%, and that's over 3 times more than any other city in the province? So Weyburn is 2.5 years younger than the Canadian average. I thought that was a remarkable statistic. This statistic actually demonstrates to potential investors that we have a large population of young people with a strong labor force. A young population also drives innovation and a potential of growth in a community. So that's great news for Weyburn. Did you know that Weyburn is home to nearly 1,000 immigrants, with 62% of them immigrating after 2010? We've heard it many times and will continue to hear it. Our province's future growth is highly dependent on immigration. Did you know that according to the 2016 census, the estimated annual household spending in Weyburn is $278 million, and our regional spending is $1 billion. In Weyburn alone, $36.4 million of those purchases is within the retail food market. Now, think of this. If we spend $36 million on food, what percentage do you think is spent on restaurant food? Councillor Bailey, what do you think?
Thanks a lot. I do eat out too much, I know that. My guess would be about 3 million, or 300 million.
What about percent?
A percentage?
Percent of all the food expenditures.
10%.
We spend 29% of all of our food expenditures in restaurants.
I'm not going to tell my wife that week. She has to still keep cooking.
So I bet national food chains would contemplate this statistic alone. Without going into many more facts and statistics, these valuable measurements of our community's strengths and prosperity is evidence that we're growing and thriving. Favorable data gets investors to our door, but community pride and an open for business attitude contributes to their decision to walk through that door and call Weyburn home. Manufacturing is another area of growth we're focusing on for 2018, and I know I've had some interesting conversations with Councillor Wheeler about this. Within the province of Ontario alone, manufacturing companies are being crippled by rising electrical costs. Saskatchewan has a low corporate income tax rate for manufacturers, as well as numerous other tax incentives which position this province well in terms of attractiveness for manufacturing. In addition, we already produce a wide range of manufactured goods, the majority of which are exported out of the province to markets across Canada and throughout the world. We need to and will push our elected officials to address these opportunities. Geographically, Weyburn is ideally located on major highways and rail lines. We're located near the U.S. markets as well as the global transportation hub. On the tourism front, we've got an exciting year ahead. On an annual basis, we produce a tourism guide for Weyburn, and I've got last year's right here. This tourism guide promotes all the wonderful events and amenities that we have to offer. And many tourists use this as their first impression to our community. Whether they discover it online on our mobile-friendly website, or when they go to the hockey rink or one of our local hotels, they can pick this up and get a snapshot view of what we have to offer in terms of amenities. Also, new to 2018, we look forward to investigating the implementation of a destination marketing fund. We call this a DMF. A DMF is fees levied by hotels who contribute to a collective fund used for promotion, marketing, and other tourism activities. So I bet if you stayed in a hotel in Saskatoon or Regina or Swift Current for that matter, you see maybe a 3 or a 2% DMF at the bottom of your hotel bill. So that's a sum of money that the hotels collect on behalf of a separate entity. And all that money goes in towards promoting and marketing special events for Weyburn. This money would allow us to attract and host these events that were cost prohibitive in the past. So what a great potential to boost our local economy, and we're certain to keep you posted on this initiative in the coming months. Also in 2018, we look forward to working with the City of Weyburn in the implementation of the official community plan. The OCP is a long-term plan that provides direction for managing future growth. Weyburn Regional Economic Development can provide our local intelligence and a strong aptitude in marketing to aid in this endeavor. So in conclusion, I have touched on some high-level initiatives we're working on in the coming 12 months. You have been provided with a detailed work plan and my budget for 2018 in today's meeting package. If you have any specific questions, please let me know. And as always, we really appreciate the support from the City of Weyburn, and we can't wait to see what 2018 has in store for our community.
Thank you, Twyla. Any questions, gentlemen, from the council? Louise, do you have any questions for her? No? Go ahead. Mr. Richards?
Thanks, Your Worship. Twyla, thanks for coming and sort of doing this presentation for us, and I know that there's so much more that you could talk about that we're going to go quick. Two things for me. First, thank you for working on that Destination Marketing Fund. I think that'll be a big improvement for everything that we do here. And secondly, although I won't say it if Manager Hardy looks at me, great job on that Montreal Canadiens alumni game that you guys helped to bring together in December to bring some folks to our community. Unfortunately, the Canadiens did cheat and won that game. But I just wanted to say thanks for all of this and bringing it forward, because it's very refreshing to see.
Thank you. All right.
With that, do you have one of those sheets for me? And with that, we'd like to thank you for your time that you're here. And is there any other questions that we have? We also thank you, and we look forward to working with you here this summer. We all now have the reports of standing committees. There's nothing there. The consent agenda, we have the 2017 annual license report.
Yes, Your Worship. It's just required by the bylaw of the business license bylaw that I provide council with a year-end report on the business licenses of 2017. I billed out approximately $95,000. However, several, maybe don't. In January, I bill them out, and then we have some that cancel that maybe aren't working in the city. That includes contractors right to commercial businesses. Roughly, I have probably got about 350 business licenses, and business licenses would be such as commercial, your commercial storefronts. And then there is about 300 general licenses. That would be your people that don't have a storefront, contractors, repairmen, etc. So this report, I'm just asking that council accept it, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Hopefully I can answer.
Is there any questions of the council?
Your Worship, I'm prepared to make a motion that the 2017 annual business license report be accepted as presented.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Any discussion? With that, call to question. All in favor? Passed unanimously. And I just want to make note also that Mr. Van Betju is absent at this point in time with council. He's away. Motions. We now move into accounts payable. May we have a motion, please?
Your Worship, I'd like to move that the purchases in the amount of $6,680,598.36 from December 30th, 2017 to January 18th, 2018 be passed for payment.
Second?
Your Worship, I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Mr. Mickle.
Thank you, Your Worship. The $6 million ticket, what was the biggest, I'll go back to finance, Was there a big number in there to make that 6 million?
Yeah, there was there was an investment for 5 million.
Any more further discussion? Call to question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. We have the appoint youth member to council. Mr. Hardy?
Through your worship, as council has adopted its new procedures by law, I would like to suggest that council appoint excuse me, a little bit of noise.
Stage hands.
Stage hands, yeah, they'll do it every time. I'd like to appoint Landon Fields to the position of, recommend to council that he be appointed as the youth member for a term not to exceed 1 year.
Do you have a motion, please?
Thanks, Your Worship. I'd be happy to make a motion that Landon Field be appointed as the City of Weyburn's first youth member on City Council as per Council Procedures Bylaw 2017-3371 for a term not to exceed 1 year.
I'll second that, to your worship.
Discussion? I would just like to say, go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Daly.
thank you, Your Worship. This is just tremendous way to bring young people to council, and I know from past experience of many years ago of being part of this council, and I won't tell you what year it was, but I like the 1 year term. We had a longer term in there, but I like the 1 year term that was motioned on to this evening, because it does give more other people time to fit in, and I hope the school will have a way of making that work, and it's just great for the community. Speaks very generously of this council to involve young people in our community at all levels.
Louise, would you like to make any comment?
I think it's a great idea that when a friend of mine proposed the idea of a youth member council, I thought it would be a great idea. As an immigrant and as a student in Weyburn Comp, I thought it would be a great idea to have a voice in where I live and would be able to be more immersive. And I think this is a great chance for me to learn more stuff about Canada and the government and the politics.
Well, we thank you and we welcomed it. Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. And again, welcome to our council, and you sit as the substitute mayor here this evening. Although it is not a voting position, you do have that you're asked to join in the discussions, and we'll point to you numerous times asking for your opinions. If you have one, you point it forward. If you don't, then that is quite okay. Next, we have the electrical instrumentation tender reservoir expansion project. Do we have to speak to this?
Your Worship, I would start off with some background, and the city engineer will then follow up. Just wanted to point out to council with respect to this tender that earlier in the year, Westridge Construction was provided the main tender for the expansion of the water treatment plant. The electrical and instrumentation was not included in this contract, and it was to be released to a contractor following award, and it would be the responsibility of the contractor to obtain a minimum of 3 quotes for the electrical and instrumentation works. And I'll turn it over to the city engineer in terms of talking about the results and answering any questions that council may have.
Just turn on your mic.
According to Westridge, they invited 3 specialized electrical contractors, AIM Electric Limited, Alliance Energy Limited, Trade Power Limited. They got 3 quotes from them, and they selected the lowest bidder. In consultant with our managing company, AECOM, they have reviewed the specification from the 3 bidders, and they verified that the lowest bidder will provide the items needed for the electrical redundancy and mechanical redundancy at a cost of $1,437,000. and the mechanical for 200,067 and $852.90. The addition for the electrical and instrumentation work to contract 2 would result in a revised contract price of $12,701,303.72. This will bring the revised contract price for contract 2 to $12,701,303.72.
Discussion? Or first off, can we maybe have a motion to accept this?
Yes, Your Worship, I have a motion in front of me here that the City Council amend the contract price of the Reservoir Expansion Contract 2 to reflect the additional cost of electrical and instrumentation work at a price of $2,039,670.
Do you have a second? Second?
I'll second it.
Discussion. Mr. Richards. Go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. To the Director of Engineering, is this sort of, and I know that you're not responsible for collecting the bids, I know you're not responsible for any of that the contractor was, but do these prices seem, in your experience, like they're in line? It seems like a big ticket item added on to the end, and I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable with this process and how it happened, because just on the surface, I don't know how comfortable I am with how this process happened. So if this is standard practice, great, whatever you can offer. Thank you.
It's not standard practice. I'm not comfortable either with the way it works, but there is some restriction which I wasn't involved in. So part of it, the design wasn't complete. We verified, or we already have commissioned AECOM, our managing company for this project, for reviewing those 2 quotes, the 3 quotes from the bidders and the mechanical one, and they verified it is within the limit they anticipated. Though initially they were anticipating $1.5 million, now it is around $2 million. This is because Westridge have added their extra cost for doing the extra work for this part of the contract. That being said, Westridge have expressed that this may add 2 extra months for the completion date for this project.
Mr. Chess? No. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, thanks, Your Worship. I was just going to follow up. So you're comfortable now with where we're at, though, in terms of what's been proposed. I realize, so you've said, and I appreciate that, this isn't how you would like to have got to where we are, but you're comfortable with what you see now, and you feel like we're getting good value for a dollar out of this? I know that's not fair, to be honest, because I know that that's not your area of expertise, but I just want a level of comfort, because I most assuredly don't understand a lot of the technology here.
My level of experience is civil engineering. It's not electrical and mechanical. This is straightforward. So I'm just relying on AECOM right now. However, that being said, the process and what I figured through the previous period with AECOM, there is a lack of communication between AECOM and us. We had a meeting, myself, Laura, and Shabir, with the AECOM representative, and we expressed that we are not satisfied about their performance for conveying the information, as well as about the way they are handling or managing the project on behalf of us. Up till now, there is no advancement. We are just putting some pressure on them. We will be meeting with them in January 25th in the water treatment plant, and we will reiterate about our expectation and what we will get for our dollar.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chessel, first.
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess I understand the overage that we got to that point. That I'm comfortable with. What I am struggling with is maybe Westridge's process on, did they just handpick 3? Was this sent out to any local contract? I know it's specialized, but there is many electrical contractors and companies that can handle instrumentation within southern Saskatchewan. So it's just a surprise to see 2, Saskatoon and Regina, with not one single bid from southern Saskatchewan, at least.
Westridge submitted or asked for 3 bidders they already have worked with in similar projects, so they didn't request for tender request for proposal for instrumentation or mechanical component publicly. They just invited the 3 companies for giving their price.
So they just asked their 3 buddies?
Yeah, that's what, and so,
Yeah, and I guess myself, at that, I would not be in favor of this motion.
go ahead, Mr. Peeler.
Thanks, Your Worship. I do have a little bit of experience in this field, and I think the pricing they got is a little bit high. We're looking at almost 20% of the overall project costs and instrumentation electrical. I think it's a pretty major oversight. And I agree with Councillor Chessel over there. There are a couple companies close. One of them's based, actually 2 of them are based right out of Weyburn that have the means to supply this. And I would challenge Westridge as to why they didn't try to farm this out locally, because any of these companies coming in from out of town, there's mobilization costs associated with that. May not seem like much, but over a 2-month span, we're talking hotels, accommodations, and subsistence pay, so 10% of their bill could be for lodging and getting people here. And so for that reason, I don't think I can accept this. I think it should be looked at a little bit further.
Mr. Mickle?
Thank you, Worship. Nader, I guess the question I have for you, you mentioned a number of 1.5 you thought it was going to be at, and I understand that. Is there any on this project, is there any way we can cut $500,000 to get back close to budget? Or is that an unfair question to ask?
We are still in budget. The grant was initially $15,902,000. We already, Laura was working with the council previously to do some kind of saving. And even in the letter we provided, there is proposed projects to utilize grant funding. So those are the surplus of the money we have. So we are not over budget yet. This is one thing, just to make it clear. Still, the process, we have to go forward for procuring those in order to complete the project, the water treatment plant project. Whether we go with locals, challenge as suggested, or go for approving this change order.
I believe, Nader, too, that because of the size of the project, we hired a firm called Collier Project Leaders. Anyway, they looked after the pre-qualified tenders and the bid document review as well. The reason why we hired these people over and above is to find out and protect us because of the magnitude of the project, and that's been done. These people did a good job for us. This does not surprise me where the numbers are, even though we're $500,000 over, but I know the project itself came in under budget, and I think we're on the right path. I will support this motion.
Any other comments? Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I remember right in this chamber, when we awarded this to those managements, I believe it was you, Councillor Mickle, that asked those people the question, when we get this all said and done, there's not going to be another $1 million or $2 million here, and all of a sudden, with the project being, very low starting point, we've got another $1.5 million coming up here.
Well, we knew this was coming, Councillor Bailey.
We knew part of it was coming.
Yeah, the 1.5 we knew was coming. It's 500,000.
But I mean, and we've just got started. So I mean, where's it going to go? And that's what I'm afraid of too. That we have our budget set for this whole project, and before we get 20% done, we're already asking for another $500,000 or $500,000.
Mr. Hardy?
So I don't like it.
Through you, Your Worship, I'd just want to ask Laura, our engineer, to just provide a bit of background, as she was involved in the contracting process, and I think she can provide. She's provided us with some background that, Laura, there were some discussions with some local contractors. Is that the case?
Yes, when we set up contract 2 to have the general contractor get 3 bids for the electrical work, the city did specify that we would like local contractors considered at that time. and the qualifications of local electrical and instrumentation contractors were reviewed during this process.
And none of them were chosen?
Westridge felt they did not have the qualifications to complete the work.
And this is where I think we would dispute with them, because they have done numerous projects, huge, bigger projects than this in the oil field, and they're telling us that they can't. And this is, I am strong feelings with all these other ones, that there becomes this closed group picking their own, and I would like to see this rebid again on myself, and I wouldn't support this motion to accept this. I want to see them all rebid and reanalyze again. Mr. Hardy.
Through you, Your Worship. Yeah, my point was to just fill in the gaps and so that staff did do its part.
I know, not that
in terms of that, and I do understand the fact that none of them were qualified by the contractor is something that we need to, not just in this case, because council will deal with this case, but we need to look at this in terms of our procurement practices in the future as well. So I will undertake that at this point, that we'll be doing some work with respect to some of our purchasing policies and tendering policies, and also follow up on those and bring a report back to council on those. But I leave it with council to deal with this particular item that's on the floor.
And again, Nader, your express is that you and Laura are going to be meeting with AECOM again, but at this point in time, you're not totally happy with their way they have been communicating, and for the dollars, we're not getting our money for this. And this is one of the things that I think that I am just expressing my own thing, hearing that there's so many of these times you see these, some of these firms are just are here to get the dollars and not give the value for it. And then things keep escalating out of the way. For this one, again, I'm with a lot of the other council members that won't support this. Any other discussion? Call the question. Just Mr. Wheeler. Yep, you're on.
Yeah, I'd just like to question Westridge's requirements for this work, because I know I work with 2 instrumentation electrical companies in my industry, and they're qualified to do work for a complicated oil process facility. It's probably, we just wrapped up 2 projects probably worth equal to this, and neither one of them struggled meeting the requirements to meet our standards, and I believe our standards are fairly high in the industry. So I would really challenge Westridge's method of choosing, I guess, because I know for a fact that there are 2 local companies that would probably love the opportunity to bid on this, and because Westridge didn't see fit to give them a chance, I think it's not fair to our local businesses.
Mr. Hardy?
Through you, Your Worship, I'm not going to presuppose what council is going to do, but I also suggest that you know, as part of a procurement process, council does have the option to table this motion and direct staff to have a further meeting with Westridge and AECOM with respect to the details surrounding the awarding of bids.
Would you like to make that motion, Mr. Wheeler?
We have the motions on the floor.
Or are the other motions on?
What do we do with that? You can amend it. You can table.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you want to table it?
I'll make a motion. We table that, Your Worship.
I'll second it, Your Worship.
Call the question. All in favor? Is tabled to which point in time?
Your Worship, we'll table it until staff have had an opportunity to meet with AECOM and Westridge and review this, given the information which has been brought to council's attention.
Thank you. The airport maintenance policy. Mr. Hardy.
Through Your Worship, policy has been developed by engineering staff with respect to putting into documentation the operational maintenance policy for the Weyburn Airport. And I would suggest that to council that the recommendation is for that this go forward, and that council adopt the airport maintenance policy. If council has any particular questions, I would have them directed to our engineer.
Call the motion.
Your worship, I'm prepared to make a motion that council accept the airport maintenance policy as presented by the Director of Engineering.
Second.
I'll second that, your worship.
Discussion? Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, your worship. Just a question on that. With reading through this, I don't see anything really different that's out of the norm of what we have been doing already. And it's just a matter of documentation more than anything. It's very thorough. It's kind of boring reading all the definitions and stuff, but in saying that, I understand the process to make it viable, accessible, manageable on it. So I don't think there's a whole lot of change here.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Bailey, no, there isn't, except we've clearly defined the roles of our staff, and then there is some support done by our city police department on weekends. Yeah, this just basically gets it all documented, and we know who's responsible for what at the airport, and I think that's a good step forward in terms of moving operations forward and being clear of whose responsibilities things are.
Thank you.
Mr. Mickle?
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Bailey, the only change that you'll see is that after our Mr. Kerr passed away, Dennis Manel and Jeff Farr co-managed the airport, and they did it at no cost to the airport and to the city of Weyburn, but they wanted out, and this is why that's why you see the policy, and it's a very detailed policy, and I thank engineering for that policy. It's in depth, it's to the point, and I also thank the Weyburn City Police for looking after it when they have time to do this. Airport, even though you think it's a small part of Weyburn, but it is a big part of Weyburn, especially with the oil sector that depends on that, and STARS and everybody, and air ambulance as well. So the only change you'll see is the two gentlemen that helped us out, one out, and the Weyburn Police and our engineering have worked together to make everything well adapted at the airport.
Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Appoint Board of Revision.
Your worship.
Motion.
I apologize first off for the mispronunciation of names on here, if I do mess that up. But at this time, I'd like to make the motion that the City of Weyburn appoint Gord Krisner and Associates Limited to serve as the City of Weyburn Board of Revision for 2018. Panel members include Clinton Krisner, Chair, Gord Krisner, Vice Chair, Jeff Hutton, Brenda Loff, Kirby Bodnard, Dave Lang, and Cam Duncan, Aline Swenson, Secretary. And further, that the following fee schedule be accepted. The fee schedule is as follows. Annual retainer fee, $150. Hearings for full day, 4 to 8 hours, is $1,350. Hearings, half day, 2 to 4 hours, $675. Hearings, minimum less than 2 hours, would be $400. Mileage to be paid would be 50 cents a kilometer. Meals, $45 per day per person. Accommodations if required, real and actual. Written decisions, $75 per hour. Secretarial duties, $35 per hour. Printing, including letters, envelopes, and labels, 25 cents per page each. Postage, real and actual. Regular posts, registered mail, and etc.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Discussion? Mr. Hardy, if you would be so kind as to relate to the public what basically the Board of Revision does.
Certainly. Through your worship to members of the public, the Board of Revision is the first step after an individual makes an appeal on their tax assessment. And so before it moves to a higher level of review, there's a local group, a local board, which has experience in terms of assessment and assessing properties. And this particular group does work for a number of small, medium, and large municipalities across the province to hear an individual's discussions. That person obviously would be involved in a hearing with SAMA on one side and the individual and/or their representatives. So this is the first stage of a tax appeal that is done locally. And if at the end of the day either party is not happy with the results of that board, which is obviously written up and communicated to both SAMA, the city, and to the individual property owner, then the property owner or the other party has the ability to review it, send it to the Saskatchewan Municipal Board for review. So it's basically a local process that ensures that local individuals who have knowledge of the assessment process can take a look at an individual who makes an appeal and work with those individuals to see if there is some common ground which can be achieved, which avoids a further appeal at the municipal board.
Thank you for your very thorough explanation. Any other discussion? At this point, call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. The next one is the appoint Secretary of the Board of Revision.
Your Worship, I have a motion that I'd like to present that Arlene Swenson and Gord Krishmer and Associates be and is hereby appointed as the Secretary for the Board of Revision for the 2018 taxation year, with duties outlined on the Board of Revision Assessment Appeals Manual with a fee of $35 per hour.
Second?
I'll second that motion, Your Worship.
Discussion? No discussion? At this point, call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. We now move to unfinished business. The one is our development charges policy update. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Your Worship. After last council meeting in which there were some thoughts put forward by some council members, a small group sat and met with me with respect to looking at the development charges policy in trying to ensure that there's an appropriate level of clarity around how properties are to be assessed for their development charges. And in terms of the changes from the last draft that people saw of the policy, we reviewed the calculation of the development area, and we decided, we came to a consensus basically that for the purposes of determining what the development area it would include the building and any parking areas and any on-site walkways or driveways. So it's a little bit of a reduction from what was determined earlier, so that we have a very clear definition of how that development area is calculated. Secondly, in terms of the development charges schedule, the changes that we made that are in front of council right now, we've separated subdivision servicing fees from non-subdivision development fees. So in the case of residential properties, the $76,440 per acre fee is to be retained for residential housing over 2 acres. A maximum of $15,287 per dwelling unit for low-density housing. And then for those properties which also included additional development units, there was an additional $83.31 unit for multi-residential housing. And I'll just clarify in terms of that number, because of the number which was calculated or was in the previous bylaw was at about $6,000. However, it has to relate back to some of the information that is within the development charges bylaw. So I've gone and recalculated this, and so that 8331 is the proper number that should be used per unit above that when we have multi-residential. In the commercial, industrial, or institutional area, again, the 76,440 per acre is there. The 15,287, again, for small developments of less than 2 acres where there's a connection to the city's water or sewer system. And then again, if it's a multi commercial unit like a hotel or whatever, there's an additional 86 there's an 8331 charge per unit. But the one fee that we all worked through and came to in terms of the per square foot charge, that per square foot charge is $1.75 per square foot for any development or redevelopment area where no subdivision of land is required. So when it gets down to it, that charge of $12.21 has been recalculated and has been set at $1.75 per square foot. Those are the changes which are made as a result of those discussions. And Council, I think, has two options. Council can direct me to bring this to the next meeting as for a policy adoption and to change the bylaw to reflect this if they so desire. Or council can make a decision to pass this policy, and we will go ahead and be ready with the bylaw for the next meeting.
Can I have a call to motion to pass the bylaw?
Your Worship, I'll make a motion that the development charges policy for the City of Weyburn be accepted as presented.
Second it?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Discussion?
Great job to Roy, Jeff, Mel for working on this. Took us some time, took us a year to figure this out, but I think we finally have a formula that works. And yeah, great job all the way around.
Mr.
I promise I'll be fast. Thank you, Your Worship. I also would like to tip my hat to the city manager who was patient and worked through this with us and ensured that we understood what it was that we were trying, so that he understood what we were trying to accomplish, but also to make sure that we met all the regulatory requirements. Largely the change here is a reduction, obviously, in the per acre fee from 86,000 down to 76,000. And the biggest change is that square foot of redevelopment on net gain from $12.22 down to $1.75. But the change there is it is on the development area, not just on the square footage of the building. So that will have a small impact, not a lot. And if folks are interested, we did run some scenarios to make sure that this was a lot more reasonable, if that's the right word, a piece of work for us to work with and our developers. So thanks again, Manager Hardy.
Other questions, discussion? The one comment I just want to and it kind of relates to this while we're discussing. Mr. Hardy, that in looking at different provinces on how they have their development levies and what this money can be used for, as in different places, and everybody looks back to Ontario and that, when I was down in Ontario, they were referring to hospitals and schools as infrastructure on that, whereas Saskatchewan narrows what they refer to as infrastructure. Does that, what does infrastructure mean here in Saskatchewan according to this levy? What can we spend the money on?
Yeah. Through you, Your Worship, it's very clear in terms of the legislation that development charges are based on the categories of water supply, treatment and distribution, sanitary sewage collection, storm drainage, transportation, in other words, your roads and highways and your traffic control, and parks and recreation. So those are the 5 areas under which levies, development charges are collected for. There's there is the legislation in Ontario has been similar, but there have been a number of moves to try and change this based on the circumstances or the fiscal health of some municipalities. This covers most of the real growth. There's a couple of areas which I think would be certainly areas which I think should be included, those specifically being our fire and police services, or those elements of fire and police services that require us to put that infrastructure in place. But these are the areas which we're working with now. Those other areas are ones which we usually consider under our base tax. So that's where those particular two are covered right now.
So this money could be used when they talk about water supply. This money could be used to drill a very deep well for water supplementation to our city water.
If there is a need to supplement, if it means that it's going to be used to accommodate growth, it has that capacity, and those types of projects are things that would have to be included, would need to be included, obviously, if it was a priority of the city, would be included in the next development charges study to ensure that its costs are also reflective of what is involved in those particular areas.
I guess the reason why this is on mind is that council members and some of the citizens may know already that here we have Cape Town, South Africa is the first major city, 4 million people. They're going to run out of water by end of April. They had a 3-year water supply, such as Weyburn had. They experienced 3 years of growth. Their city council failed to take action in the last couple of years, hoping for rain, and now they have got 3 months of water left, and they are in major problems, 4 million people. So just always looking forward to saying we have to look forward to make sure we have a good and adequate water supply for our city. Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Yes, finally, and thank you again for all the members of the council and Roy for working on this. 1 year and 3 months. The next one is the 2018 budget. We bring forward Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and we have a chart that sort of outlines where we were with respect to the 2018 budget. In terms of capital and in operating, we had identified that we were at about a 4.79% increase. However, we've identified a number of projects that could be included to reduce that number if council feels they are less of a priority. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to council to have a discussion and make any adjustments it sees necessary to bring this budget in, and then we can move forward dealing with taxation items afterwards.
So what we need is a motion to have discussion. We need a motion on the floor. May we have a motion to accept this budget as presented? We can make amendments afterwards.
Okay, because my dollar amounts.
Yeah. You can make the amendments after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this hasn't changed.
Yeah,
Then make it with your changes.
I'll make a motion that the 2018 capital budget for the city of Weyburn be approved in the amount of $21,263,532. And I'd also make a motion that the operating budget for the city of Weyburn be approved in the amount of $28,521,751.
Do we have a second? You can always repeat it afterwards, but second the motion. Second?
I'll second it, Your Worship.
Okay,
Just
call the
put it on
discussion.
table.
Yes, discussion. Mr. Mickle.
Those numbers are great, but for the consumer or taxpayer, what's the percentage increase?
Mr. Chesson?
So, Your Worship, if...
Well, actually, we'll let the finance.
Okay.
He's anxious.
So those amounts were taking out 50,000. Actually, it's not this amount, but so it's taking out 50,000 in the transfer, 15,000 for software, and 70,000 for a works floor, and so it ends up being a 2.54% increase
In our tax.
in tax. The
So, Your
tax
Worship,
base
that's a
overall.
2.54% increase
On the assessed value.
on the assessed value.
And that is way under, that's still even a 0.5 under what you requested there, Mr. Mickle.
Very, very, very pleased. The motion's on the floor. Let's vote and not lose it.
Any other discussion? At that point, call the question. Oh, yeah.
Just for clarification, Your Worship, sorry.
Put your mic on.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Just for clarification, Laura, instead of the 100,000, we're changing that to 50,000?
Correct.
And so out of that 100,000 transfer, 50,000 then will go into operations?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the rest of the projects that we have in front of us here as indicated, all of those will be approved then?
Yep.
Thank you.
Except for-
sorry,
Except the 70,000 for the works floor, is that what? The works.
the works floor will be.
And the software.
And the software.
Look up there, Winston. The works and the software.
I can't see that for Your Worship.
Stand up and look.
Yeah.
So, Your Worship, just to clarify, the discussion, the numbers which have been suggested would reduce that, would make that $50,000 go into the operating budget. It would eliminate the software for the urban forestry, and it would take out the project for the public works floor, which was scheduled as a result of we have a scheduled new building to be put in place in the next couple of years to replace that. So we thought it was less of a priority to do that.
I understand. So the $70,000 out for that
That's
work
correct.
floor area
Yeah.
can wait.
Can wait.
We are doing the fire floor for the
We
fire
are doing
department.
the fire floor.
Okay, I know,
And
I've
our
seen a
intent-
smile already.
Yeah, and our intent is to work on the areas in which there's traffic, not necessarily the whole floor, but we'll get the traffic areas properly treated. That'll be our priority as staff when we're working with that.
Okay, so with these, then we're coming in at 2.54 increase.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And with that consideration, it is, I believe, what did we say last time, that Swift Current won 13.5 increase, and I think was last year Yorkton was at 7 something. I don't know what they're at this year. Was about 7.5. So bringing it in at 2.4, I really commend our manager, Mr. Hardy, and all the management team that he has underneath him, everyone around, on working very diligently to bring this in at a very, very reasonable rate, considering what we've had for budget cuts from our provincial government all the way through. So, and I thank all the team management of the city here.
One more thing, Your Worship, thank you, and I don't want to pick on our fire chief. Seeing how he's getting a non-slip floor out of this, I see in there that there is, where's my number, 930,000, is it, for fire truck?
That's not in this budget.
That was approved last year.
That's approved, would be approved for next year's budget, though.
No, that was approved last year.
That was approved last year. Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
If there's no further questions, discussion, call the question. All in favor of the budget for 2018? Approved fully. Thank you. Unanimously. Very good. With this, our city and our all of our management and our departments can move forward and bring the city into business here and continue on. Our next item for discussion, we have a home occupation application, accounting office. I don't know if you have to. You're going to. Okay. You're going to remove yourself conflict of interest. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report in front of council is for a home occupation application for an accounting office. We've had a couple of these in the past couple of meetings. So as you know, that home office or a home occupation is considered a controversial application and therefore needs council approval. The process has involved informing the people within 75 meters of the property about the idea of what is happening there, and there is a public hearing on there, and there have been no comments or concerns brought forward from the neighborhood notice. The planning review basically has indicated that this is fully contained within an accessory building and is considered, and has a driveway available for off-street parking. Council options are to approve the home office without further conditions. Number 2, to approve it with the following conditions of the operating hours being limited from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mondays to Fridays. Clients will be directed to park in the driveway of the applicant's residence. No outside storage of materials were permitted. And I will add that there be the limitation on appropriate signage similar to the city signage bylaw. And then the third one would be to refuse, council to refuse the home office at 331 Government Road. So council, the staff recommendation is to approve the home office with the conditions, including the one regarding signage.
Do you have a motion, please?
Your Worship, I'd like to make the motion that the home occupation application of Ardell Waldner to operate an accounting office in her residence at 331 Government Road Northwest be approved with the following conditions. Operating hours will be limited to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday to ensure that the lights or excess traffic, should it exist, does not create a nuisance to the neighbors or the neighboring property owners. Clients will be directed to park in the driveway of the applicant's residence. No outside storage or disposal of materials will be permitted. No advertisement carrying the address of the dwelling in which the home occupation occurs may be placed in any media. The face of the home business sign on site must not exceed 0.092 meters or square meters and must be placed within the inside half of the front yard setback.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Discussion? There's no further discussion. All in favor? Approved unanimously. With that, we now bring up the fire chief, will be probably, if he may have some questions. And we are discussing the pumper truck replacement, which was approved by council in last year's budget. May we have the motion, discussion there, Mr. Hart?
Your Worship, the recommendation of the fire chief is to proceed with the purchase based on the information which he has put in front of council, and he has the ability. He has reviewed the specifications, etc., and he's willing to answer any questions with council with a wish to proceed for sole sourcing this purchase from the vendor. Noting that part of this is one of the vendors that SUMA conducted some discussions with earlier in the year in terms of providing some group discounts for individual Saskatchewan municipalities who are in the market for fire vehicles. So I'll let the chief give his introduction and his overview, and then leave it to council for questions.
Okay, go ahead and do this, please. Then I was going to call the motion first, but then go ahead.
Good evening, Council, Your Worship. I'm here before you today to seek approval to purchase a fire apparatus that was approved during the 2017 budget process, with direction given to myself to purchase it in 2018, or the end of 2017. As the city manager alluded to, we're in a unique opportunity right now as SUMA, in conjunction with their Alberta counterparts and Manitoba counterparts, have done a joint purchasing initiative for fire apparatus and equipment. with the highlight that perhaps the purchasing requirements of different municipalities were so great and so varied. They called a tender for different manufacturers or suppliers that could supply these pieces of equipment. Two successful bidders, or two bidders, were Rocky Mountain Phoenix out of Red Deer, Alberta, and Fort Garry Fire Trucks out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. Okay. When we looked at both of those vendors, they're very good vendors. We looked at what they had to offer. We found that as a cost-saving measure for the city of Weyburn, we were interested in a demonstrator fire truck. Unfortunately, Fort Garry had no demonstrated vehicles that would meet our approval. However, Rocky Mountain Phoenix did via Rosenbauer. They had 3 vehicles which would meet our approval. I went down to the factory the week before Christmas, looked at all 3 vehicles. One was unsuitable. The other 2 were suitable. Out of the 2 that were suitable, I picked the cheapest one that they had. Okay, and that's the vehicle they have before you today, right now. It's not a cheap purchase. It's a fully equipped fire apparatus. It comes with all the equipment that's needed. Okay, and we're looking at a total cost of $691,000 in U.S. funds. Okay. The other caveat to this is when the dealer quotes an exchange rate, he quoted an exchange rate of 1.29 because he allows a 0.5% fudge factor for market fluctuations. I'm saying as a city of Weyburn is of a sophistication and complexity that perhaps we should take care of that exchange rate. Okay. I'm not quite sure. I'm not in the financial exchange business, but I believe that we could get that money for a rate of 1.24 as opposed to 1.29%. That additional 5 points actually equates to $27,000 Canadian. So it's worthwhile us taking the risk and doing the savings ourselves.
Can we have a motion, please, for approval? Who's got it? There's no motion?
Anybody want to make a motion for the purchase?
We're making a motion for the purchase?
I'll make a motion that we purchase, Your Worship, to get it on the floor.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Then I have some questions to our
Okay, go
fire
ahead.
chief.
Start your question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Simon, I guess I have 2 questions. First of all, I appreciate the work you've done for the fire department in Weyburn, and I trust you that Weyburn Department needs this truck to give the service that people expect us to give them. My next question is a loaded one. In my terms of office as a councillor, there's been a lot of trucks purchased over the years.
Yes.
Are we almost there?
We are there. We are there.
Could you say that louder, please?
We are there, your councillor. This truck won't be replaced. Should we purchase this truck right now, we won't be replacing this one until 2033. I don't have the direct report in front of me or the spreadsheet I gave you before about vehicle replacements, but this is the last big ticket one that we're replacing for quite a number of years.
Of any fire truck?
The next one to be replaced is actually a 1-ton pickup truck that we have as a grass fire vehicle right now. Okay, so when you start looking at dollar figures, we will be quite considerably less than the $1 million we're paying for fire trucks.
There's no more big ticket items?
There's no more big ticket items.
Thank you, Simon.
I'll be retired before we're buying more big ticket items. Okay.
You're not retiring tomorrow?
No, I'm not, sir.
Any other discussion?
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks also, Simon Ullman. You've been doing a great job, and I appreciate the work you put into this. A couple of questions. In your report, you said that this vehicle would be made available to other departments in the city.
Yeah.
Can you help me understand how that would work?
Well, a lot of times, so for instance, when we bought the aerial truck, okay, different departments needed the aerial truck, namely our leisure department, our parks department. They needed to change the street lights or the lights on the ball diamond, so it was made available. So this truck, the chances of them using this truck for water pumping or something like that, it is available to them. We would operate it, we would do that service for them, but it has some unique lights and things like that, which they may need.
I see.
Okay. All our equipment, I like to think it belongs to the fire department. However, we do lend it out to other departments if it's needed.
Right. And just one more question, if I could, Your Worship. The truck that's currently in service,
yes.
What does the future hold for it?
My original plan was to keep that around for a training vehicle. However, I understand that due to fiscal restraints, perhaps that should be sold. Okay, it is a 17-year-old truck. The market for a 17-year-old fire vehicle is somewhat limited. Okay, and as such, I don't think we'll be getting an awful lot of money for it. I would guesstimate between $8,000 to $15,000.
And my comment to that one is, and I put it to the council, that the concern was brought up by, I think, one of you two gentlemen here, that with the way the trains are going through, that we are basically cut off from the south side of the city is cut off at good 4 to 6 hours a day out of this. And instead of, if we are only going to look at anywhere from $8,000 to $30,000, even he says 15, some people would say 30,000, that it is better that we look at placing that unit over on that side of the city, so that with some of the volunteer firefighters, in case the times that there is a fire, that the volunteer firefighters could get that and use that for there. So that is a thing to consider before we start giving the truck away with it. Mr. Jeff?
I guess one comment on that is, what does it cost to run a 17-year-old truck? The reason we're getting rid of it is because it's 17 years old and we're buying a new one. So to keep another one around, just paying the licensing and the upkeep, is it really feasible at that point?
The cost, the reason we're getting rid of it too, Mr. Allman had stated that it's for insurance purposes too. You have to have a certain year vehicle for insurance purposes. And it's not that this thing is failing out or breaking down, it's simply that it's for insurance purposes. Because insurance, if we don't have a good enough fire department, insurance rates could possibly go up if they come in and take a look. Mr. Mickle.
Thank you. Simon, if you were given authority to do this tonight, how soon will we have it in Weyburn?
It's going to take them approximately 4 weeks to do some work at the factory. We have some shelving we need to do and things like that. But it's located in Minnesota. They have to do the Canadian pump test on and things like that. So I'm estimating about 4 weeks. We were actually hoping to have it here. I was actually striving for another discount for us so that we could put the vehicle on show at the SUMA convention, but I don't think it's going to be ready for that. It was a very minor discount anyway. We'd squeeze that nickel pretty hard.
Also, Simon, we're not affected in this budget with this purchase. This is in the 2019 budget.
I believe so, but I'll ask the director.
Payable over 15 years. Is that correct, Laura? Okay, thanks. 2019 budget. This budget does not. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Simon, when we had a visit here quite a while ago, you showed me the existing pumper truck and then kind of went through what the new one was looking like and everything. And to use the expression, I think from what we have in service now and what we're getting is from a Chevrolet to a Cadillac.
I wouldn't use the word Cadillac. I'd probably use the word Lincoln.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because one of my predecessors, the chap who bought this vehicle, Chief Pilon, and he also bought the aerial truck that he had, when he bought the vehicles that he had, which is the ones we replaced the last 2 years, there was a lot of space restrictions that he had to deal with at the old fire hall. So he probably wasn't getting the truck that he really wanted or the city really needed. He had to get one that would fit into the fire hall. Now we've alleviated those concerns.
I think what you disclosed to me there, if we replace something with something similar for capacity and service and the looks and all of those things, that our cost would be considerably less. I forget the numbers now that you told me, but it was quite significant. So to pass you to go ahead and do this, how do we afford the Lincoln compared to what we could get by with a brand new truck that probably would service us? And I think you have extended to me that this would be comparable to larger city trucks that Saskatoon, Regina's, and maybe even Calgary's would put in their fleets, not Weyburn.
You can't equate the style of vehicle to the size of the community. We buy fire apparatus for its need and its intended need, okay? One of the things that we do, if we look at how our department's evolved over the last, when this truck was put in service, okay, we moved into a new fire hall, we've added more firefighters, we've become more elaborate in our training and become more sophisticated in our response and things like that. So that's why you start getting, I'm not saying that a Kia fire truck is not needed in Weyburn, okay, and I'm not saying we need a Cadillac or a Rolls Royce. This is a very good compromise in between those two, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it comes down to dollars and cents.
I understand.
And, you know, if we're looking at 800 and some thousand Canadian funds here versus maybe one that we could get for 600,000. I want to know how do we justify the added cost if we're having a vehicle that will supply the same services?
One of the things that I'll say to that, Mr. Bailey, is replies. I'll say this to that. Since this council, which I congratulate this council, we have pulled together fire agreements, we have pulled together rescue agreements in which we are now, by doing those agreements, we are now getting the municipalities around which we serve, which we were giving free service to. They are now putting forward money to do this. With this money that they are putting forward, this is how we afford this type of equipment. We no longer are affording the stuff that is just getting by, the old Dodge Saturn getting by, old there, but we are now able to go forward and get some of the stuff. And that's how we balance the stuff out onto there, is my thoughts on this. So there's where we have to look to the future. These trucks last, you said, for another 15 to 20 years, that this one is. We have this is a total new technology that's going into these, from environmental to the way the pumps work and everything. So we are not looking forward just for 1 year. We're not looking forward to just Monday. We're looking forward to Wednesday, as in the old, what is that one called? That movie called? Anyway, but that's where we're looking forward way far to.
Thanks, Your Worship. I know, Chief Alman, these are going to be probably hard questions, so I'm not going to pin you down to numbers, but just some ballpark figures. Councillor Bailey suggested that we're not just getting a new truck apparatus equivalent to the one we have. In fact, we're sort of upping our game. And I know that you maybe don't know this off the top of your head, but basically when we convert this this truck to Canadian dollars, we're going to pay around $750,000, right? Yep. That's kind of what it's going to look like in Canadian dollars. If we were to stay at a level playing field, the same truck, but newer, and I have another question to follow up on that, what would those savings be like?
You might be saving about $120,000 to $150,000.
$120,000 to $150,000. Okay, thank you for that. Secondly, then, this 15-year lifespan based on an insurance piece. Yep. There must be more to that. So there must be 15-year-old fire trucks in service.
There is. There's quite a number of communities, more small than us, that have fire trucks that are over 15 years here. Mm-hmm. And what it is, it's a company called the Fire Underwriters Survey, okay? And they take their direction from the National Fire Protection Association, and they don't recognize a fire truck that's over 15 years old. So if you have a truck that's 16 years old or 17 years old in frontline service, as ours is, they basically view that as, we don't recognize that you have a fire truck. Okay, and they also, there's other factors that they take into play too, which is the training, the number of personnel through water supply and things like that. Okay, so we're of a city of a complexity, and we've tried to maintain that standard in that department where we meet that, because if we decide, well, we're going to start keeping our fire trucks 25 years and we'll just maintain them, well, it has other factors that affect that too. So, you know, why do we train? Why do we have a water supply and things like that?
So if we were to keep it in excess of 15 years, it would have an impact on what insurance? When you say it has an impact on insurance, on my homeowner's insurance?
No, it does have an impact on residential insurance. The Fire Underwriters Survey are a group of individuals that set an insurance rate for a municipality. So the insurance companies would go to them and they would say, what's the rate for Weyburn? Okay. And they would give them the rate. It has an impact on residential insurance. It has a tremendous impact on industrial and commercial insurance rates.
Thank you for explaining that.
Mr. Justin.
Simon, just one quick question. The, what is it, roughly about $120,000 in equipment.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's all just to outfit the truck.
That's correct.
Okay,
that's
perfect.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure. I know we have some old equipment, but I can imagine it's not going to match up and fit.
Well, one of the things we try to do, and we don't purchase a lot of equipment every year, and it's always better to purchase equipment with the fire truck because it becomes PST exempt. Okay? So I can buy the equipment for the truck and not pay PST. I can buy bunker gear for the 6 firefighters that will go on the truck, PST exempt. So there's those types of intangible savings there too.
And a lot of some of the equipment is purchased by the volunteers themselves. When in their fundraising, they actually purchase equipment that they're going to use within the fire department. The city's not buying, but the volunteers are buying. So that's how the volunteers are, even though there was discussion about how, how the volunteers will raise funds, they put it back into their own thing. And this truck also, I believe it was mentioned that although it's a demonstrator, that unlike a demo on a demonstrator on a car, where if you had 20,000 kilometers, we lose that 20,000 kilometers warranty, they're going to bring it right back to zero, and we're going to have warranty. Even though it's a demonstrator, they're doing warranty right from zero on. And how much warranty is on that? Do you know?
I want to say on the chassis and on the drivetrain, it's 3 years. On the body, it's a lifetime warranty. On the paint, it's 6 years and things like that.
But they're bringing that right back to zero.
Yep.
There. Any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Passing? Carried unanimously. Congratulations to the fire department and the volunteer firemen on purchase of a new truck. We move then forward. Inquiries, announcements.
Your Worship, I just have a quick question for Manager Roy. There has been some brief discussion on the potential of streaming our city council meetings live. Have you looked into that at all, or has staff checked into that at all?
Through your worship, we are talking with one of our providers, the providers who supports us with our council software. They have a streaming process that allows us to be able to put the live stream process in place. We obviously need to work with our partners at Access to figure out the details around that, but I'm expecting that I'll have a proposal from them in terms of a provision of service with an annual subscription that would support live streaming of council meetings, and also that it would work with our council software to basically link that portion of the council agenda with that portion of the streaming. So in effect, it would timestamp it, and you'd be able to then, public and going in, could find out, okay, what was said about this item at council meeting, and they could just turn on to that particular section and basically hear that. And it would work in tandem with the work that Access does in providing our community with some with the broadcasting of our shows.
Thank you.
Any other inquiries? I have one inquiry that it's directed, I guess, towards not so much the engineering, but more the building departments. Is there any movement on what is happening with all these billboards on either side of town coming in? Because there was a request before, there was discussion, maybe just in passing that, and people have talked to me about the state of repair that these billboards, some are gone, half broken down. What is, do you know what's going on with any of that?
Through your worship, I'll do a follow-up on that specifically, but I think what we will do is once winter is subsided, we'll get in contact with the individuals who own these signs and get some sense from them in terms of what they plan on doing and bringing them up to a reasonable standard, and getting those replaced that don't meet a reasonable standard of making the city look good.
Right. Even I don't know whether the Department of Highways have replaced that sign yet, but there was one over there by Canadian Tire. It was all broken down and busted and laying in the ditch, and it just makes the city coming in doesn't look at it as good as it possibly can. Any other questions? Do you have any questions, Louise, of the manager, city manager? No? Okay. At this point, notice of motion. There's no notice of motion. No request for clarification. We are then move into a committee of whole, at which time we are going to have a motion to move into committee of whole, please. And for the citizens at home, At this point, there'll be a fairly lengthy break, and then we'll come back and discuss what was discussed in it. And
through you, Your Worship, we will ensure that the members of the media get an update on anything that's reported back at the end of the meeting.
At the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
So may I have a motion to move into Committee of the Whole?
Your Worship, I'd like to make the motion that council move into Committee of the Whole to discuss the particulars under the Committee of the Whole section on the regular council agenda as per Section 94, subsection 2 of the Cities Act.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it, Your Worship.
All in favor? All carried unanimously. We shall move into the Committee of the Whole. At which time we'll ask everyone to move, but the media can, if they can hang out, then we'll report to you after the meeting as to what's going on.